The fluorescent lights of Nexus Corp didn't just illuminate the office, they seemed to interrogate it. At 8 p.m. on a rainy Tuesday, Leo Thorne was the only soul left on the 42nd floor, his face bathed in the pale blue glow of 3 monitors. To anyone else, the spreadsheets looked like a chaotic mosaic of numbers. To Leo, they were a symphony. For 3 years, Leo had been the ghost of Nexus. He was the one who fixed the algorithms when they stalled, the one who stayed up until dawn to rewrite Marcus's incoherent pitches, and the one who actually understood why the company's ROI had jumped by 22% in the last fiscal year. He wasn't just a senior marketing strategist, he was the structural integrity of the entire department. Today was supposed to be the payoff. The vice president of global strategy position was open, and every sign, every wink from the board, every "you're our MVP" from the CEO pointed toward Leo. Leo adjusted his tie in the reflection of his darkened screen. He looked tired, but there was a spark of hope. He had his VP speech tucked into his inner jacket pocket. He just needed to get through this 9 a.m. meeting with Marcus Sterling, the senior director of marketing and a man whose greatest professional skill was looking expensive in a suit. At precisely 9:01 a.m. the next morning, Leo stood outside Marcus's office. The door was heavy mahogany, a relic of old-school corporate vanity in a building otherwise made of glass and steel. "Come in, Leo. My man." Marcus's voice boomed. It was a voice designed for TED Talks but lacked the substance for a grocery list. Leo entered. Marcus was leaned back in an ergonomic chair that cost more than Leo's first car. He was tossing a stress ball shaped like a gold bar into the air. Beside him sat a young man who looked like he had just been plucked from a fraternity house. He was wearing a suit that didn't quite fit and was aggressively scrolling through TikTok on his phone. "Leo, you know my nephew, Brad, right?" Marcus said, not waiting for an answer. "He just graduated from state." "Go Lions." "Anyway, sit. We have things to discuss." Leo sat, his stomach performing a slow, cold somersault. "Good to see you, Brad." "Marcus, about the VP role, I've prepared a 3-year roadmap for the transition." Marcus held up a hand, a slow, condescending smile spreading across his face. "Leo, Leo, Leo. Always so focused on the horizon. That's what I love about you. But sometimes, when you're looking at the stars, you trip over the curb. The board and I have been talking. We feel that you've become essential. Too essential in your current capacity." Leo blinked. "I'm sorry. We've decided to move in a different direction for the VP role," Marcus said, his tone shifting into a rehearsed corporate sympathy mode. "We need someone with fresh energy and legacy DNA. Someone who understands the lifestyle of the brand. We're giving the VP slot to Brad here." Brad didn't even look up from his phone. "Sup, Leo. My uncle says you're like, really good with the math stuff. Looking forward to having you on my team." The silence in the room was deafening. Leo felt the air leave his lungs. "Brad? Brad is the VP? Marcus, he hasn't even had a job. I've been running this department for 3 years. I saved the Omnitech account when you were in the Hamptons." Marcus's expression hardened. The mask of friendliness slipped, revealing the cold, ego-driven manager underneath. "Watch your tone, Leo. We've also realized that your current role is a bit bloated. In the interest of streamlining and refocusing on fundamentals, we're restructuring. As of this morning, your position as senior strategist is dissolved." Leo's heart stopped. "Are you firing me?" No, Marcus chuckled, though there was no humor in it. "We value you too much for that. We're moving you to the junior data analyst pool. You'll be reporting to Brad. It's a great opportunity for you to get back to basics. Of course, this comes with a title change and let's call it a temporary compensation adjustment of 40%. The walk from Marcus's office to Leo's new desk felt like a mile-long walk to a guillotine. He didn't go back to his corner office with the view of the city. Instead, he was led to the basement, a windowless section of the office near the server room where the air smelled of ozone and stale coffee. His new desk was a laminate slab that wobbled if he typed too hard. "Here you go, champ," said the HR rep, dropping a single cardboard box on the desk. "We'll need your executive keycard back by noon. You won't need it for the parking garage either, junior staff park in the north lot. It's only a 10-minute shuttle ride away." Leo sat down. The humiliation was a physical weight, a crushing pressure in his chest. He watched through the glass partition as Brad moved into Leo's old office. He watched the janitor scrape Leo's name off the door. He thought about quitting. He should quit. But his mother's medical bills didn't care about his pride, and his rent was due in 5 days. Marcus knew this. That was the cruelty of it. Marcus knew Leo couldn't afford to walk away. He was being kept as a ghost to do the work while Brad took the credit and the paycheck. Around 3 p.m., just as Leo was staring at a blank spreadsheet, trying to find the motivation to breathe, the elevator doors opened. Marcus stepped out, looking frantic. He was carrying his sleek, silver company laptop like it was a piece of radioactive waste. He marched straight to Leo's wobbly desk, ignoring the other analysts who were staring. "Leo. Thank God you're still here," Marcus hissed, leaning in. He smelled like expensive gin and desperation. "My browser is acting up. It's freezing, the sink is broken, and I keep getting these weird pop-ups. I have the board of directors presentation in an hour, and I can't get my slides to load because the whole system is lagging." Leo looked up, his eyes dull. "Marcus, I'm a junior data analyst now. I don't think IT support is in my job description." Marcus slammed the laptop onto the desk. "Don't be a martyr, Leo. You're the only one who knows how to bypass the admin filters without triggering a security flag. Fix it now. Consider it your first junior task. If I can't present, the whole company looks bad, and that reflects on you." "I'll see what I can do," Leo said quietly. "Good man," Marcus patted him on the shoulder, the same way one might pat a reliable dog. "I'm going to grab a latte with Brad. Have it back in my office in 20 minutes. And Leo? Don't go poking around. Just fix the lag." Marcus turned and walked away, laughing at something Brad said. Leo looked down at the laptop. The screen was still unlocked. Marcus, in his arrogance, hadn't even bothered to close his windows. He had simply assumed that Leo was too broken, too defeated, to do anything but obey. Leo reached out and touched the trackpad. The cursor flickered. "Just fix the lag," Leo whispered to himself. He opened the browser settings to clear the cache, but his eyes caught the history tab. It was syncing years of data, thousands of searches, a digital map of Marcus Sterling's true nature. Leo's mouse hovered over the history icon. He felt a strange, electric tingle in his fingertips. For 3 years, he had been the ghost. It was time the ghost started haunting the house. He didn't know yet that a sneeze and a glitchy mouse were about to change his life forever. He only knew that for the first time in a long time, he held Marcus's fate in the palm of his hand. The basement office of Nexus Corp was where Hope went to be archived. It was a labyrinth of humming server racks and gray cubicles that smelled faintly of ozone and neglected dreams. Leo sat at his new station desk 4B, which was situated directly under a leaky HVAC vent that dripped with the rhythmic persistence of a ticking clock. On the desk sat Marcus's laptop. It was a top-of-the-line Xenon Pro, sleek and silver, looking entirely out of place in this graveyard of obsolete hardware. "Just fix the lag," Leo muttered to himself, his voice sounding thin in the cavernous room. He cracked his knuckles. Despite the demotion, his muscle memory took over. He was a wizard with systems, it was why he had been able to do Marcus's job for 3 years without the man ever needing to learn how to attach a PDF. Leo began by opening the task manager. The CPU was redlining at 98%. No wonder the machine was screaming. The cause wasn't a virus. It was bloat. Marcus had 47 Chrome tabs open, 3 different cloud syncing services fighting for dominance, and a dozen background applications that served no purpose other than to make the desktop look busy. Leo's plan was simple: back up the essential work files, purge the cache, and restart the sync. But as he began to sort through the open windows to ensure he didn't close an unsaved document, he caught a glimpse of the history panel. It was like looking into a dark, shallow pond. Leo knew he should look away. He knew that digital privacy was a cornerstone of corporate ethics, even if Marcus had just stomped on every other ethic Leo held dear. But his curiosity wasn't just spite, it was a survival instinct. He needed to know what kind of man had just dismantled his career. He scrolled up. The search history from the last 48 hours alone was a masterpiece of incompetence. 10:15 a.m., how to explain synergy without sounding like I'm lying. 11:30 a.m., can I fire someone for being more popular than me? 1:45 p.m., does HR track private messages sent on company Slack? Leo smirked. Yes, they did, and Marcus was too stupid to know it. 3:10 p.m., cheap Rolex replicas that pass for real in low light. Leo felt a cold, jagged laugh bubble up in his throat. This was the man who had just demoted him for failing to master the fundamentals. Marcus didn't even know how to spell fundamentals without a spell checker. But then, the searches turned darker. Leo's eyes narrowed as he scrolled further back into the synced history from Marcus's home computer. Last Tuesday, how to transfer marketing budget to personal Cayman account disguised as consulting fees. Last Wednesday, Leo Thorne performance review keywords to make a promotion look like a mistake. Last Thursday, nepotism laws in New York private sector. Leo's blood turned to ice. It wasn't just that Marcus was lazy, he was a thief. He was actively funneling company funds into a private account while systematically sabotaging Leo's career to cover his tracks. The junior analyst move wasn't a restructuring, it was a burial. Marcus wanted Leo in the basement because Leo was the only one smart enough to catch the discrepancies in the books. "You snake," Leo whispered. Leo's initial thought was to take this to HR. But he knew the HR director, Sarah, played golf with Marcus every Sunday. Without hard proof that couldn't be deleted, Leo would be laughed out of the building. He decided to export the history. He'd save it to an encrypted thumb drive, keep his head down, and wait for the right moment to strike. He opened the browser settings, went to account data, and clicked export browser history and log files. The laptop groaned. The lag Marcus had complained about was now a full-blown system seizure. The spinning beach ball of death appeared on the screen. Leo clicked save as, intending to send the file to his personal cloud, but the system didn't respond. He clicked again. And again. Suddenly, the screen flickered. A notification popped up in the corner of the screen: Outlook, draft saved. Leo's heart skipped a beat. Because the system was so bogged down, his clicks had somehow interacted with a window hidden behind the browser Marcus's Outlook. Earlier that morning, Marcus had started a company-wide update email. It was a standard, pompous announcement intended for the entire global staff, all 500 employees from Tokyo to London. The subject line was already typed in: urgent, company-wide quarterly restructuring update. Marcus had left the body of the email blank, probably waiting for Brad to write something hip to fill the space. In the chaos of the system lag, Leo's export command hadn't saved the file to a folder. It had attached the text file, the entire, unedited, 3-year browser history of Marcus Sterling, directly to that company-wide draft. Leo's breath hitched. He reached for the mouse to delete the attachment, but the lag was relentless. The cursor was jumping across the screen like a caffeinated flea. No, 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 Leo muttered, his palm sweating against the plastic. At that exact moment, the HVAC vent directly above him decided to give up. A single, heavy drop of cold, dirty condensation fell from the ceiling. It landed precisely on the bridge of Leo's nose. His eyes screwed shut. His head jerked back. Achoo! The force of the sneeze was violent. Leo's hand, still clutching the mouse, jerked downward and to the right. Click. The screen froze for a terrifying 3 seconds. Then, the scent sound, that cheerful, airy whoosh, echoed through the quiet basement. Leo stared at the screen. The drafts folder was empty. The sent folder had a new entry. To all-staff-global@nexuscorp.com. Subject: Urgent, Company-wide Quarterly Restructuring Update. Attachment: system_log_history_export_full.txt, 4.2 megabytes. Leo sat back, his hands trembling. He looked around the basement. It was still quiet. The servers were still humming. The HVAC was still dripping. But he knew that 40 floors above him, 500 computers had just chimed. 500 smartphones had just vibrated in 500 pockets. In the boardroom, where the CEO was likely prepping for the 4 p.m. meeting, a notification would have appeared. In the break room, where the gossips gathered, the file was being opened. In Marcus's own office, where he was probably laughing with Brad over an overpriced latte, his own sent mail was waiting to betray him. The attachment wasn't just a list of websites. Because Marcus had never cleared his metadata, the export included time-stamped search queries, saved passwords, indicated by asterisks, and cached thumbnails of the pages he had visited. It was a 4.2 megabyte digital suicide note. Leo looked at the sent mail one last time. He realized that even if he wanted to, there was no recall button powerful enough to stop what was coming. The email had already hit the London servers. It was already being forwarded. Suddenly, from the floor above, Leo heard a muffled sound. It wasn't a scream. It was a collective, sharp intake of breath, followed by the low, rumbling sound of 100 people laughing at once. Then came the reply all notifications. They started rolling in like a tidal wave. Is this a joke? Senior VP of Finance. Marcus, I think you attached the wrong file. Also, what is a Rolex replica? Head of Legal. Wait, did he actually search for how to embezzle from coffee fund? The intern. Leo slowly closed the laptop lid. He felt a strange, zen-like calm wash over him. He had been demoted to the basement, stripped of his title, and insulted by a man who couldn't figure out his own browser. He hadn't meant to send it. Not really. It was a sneeze. It was a drop of water. It was the universe deciding that Marcus Sterling's fundamentals needed a public audit. Leo stood up, tucked his chair in neatly, and walked toward the break room. For the first time in 3 years, he didn't feel like a ghost. He felt like the most important man in the building. I think, Leo said to the empty basement, I'm going to need a very large cup of coffee for what happens next. The break room on the 4th floor was usually a graveyard of stale bagels and awkward silences. But at 3:12 p.m., it became the epicenter of a corporate earthquake. Leo Thorne stood by the ancient industrial coffee maker, watching the liquid black gold trickle into his world's okayest employee mug. His phone, resting on the laminate counter, began to vibrate. Then it chirped. Then it screamed. The notification banner was a relentless scrolling ticker of doom. New email, urgent, company-wide quarterly restructuring update. New email, urgent. New email, is this for real? Leo didn't open his phone yet. He didn't need to. He could hear the reaction through the ceiling. A low, rhythmic thumping, the sound of hundreds of employees in the cubicles above simultaneously leaning back in their chairs, some laughing, some gasping, and all of them hitting forward. In the corner of the break room, a young intern named Toby was staring at his laptop, his jaw literally hanging open. "Oh my God," Toby whispered, his voice cracking. "Marcus," he searched for how to tell if my shadow is judging me. And average settlement for wrongful termination of a genius? Wait, is he talking about himself? Leo took a slow, deliberate sip of his coffee. It tasted like victory. While the basement was buzzing with the energy of a holiday, the 50th floor, the executive suite, was experiencing a different kind of atmosphere. It was the kind of silence that precedes a tectonic shift. In boardroom A, Marcus Sterling was in his element. Or at least, he thought he was. He stood at the head of a 20-foot polished quartz table, surrounded by the board of directors and the CEO, Arthur Sterling, no relation to Marcus, a fact Arthur reminded people of daily. Marcus was halfway through a presentation about synergistic downsizing that he had forced Leo to write 3 weeks ago. He was using the very laptop Leo had fixed. "And so," Marcus said, clicking his remote with a flourish, "by reallocating our human capital, specifically by moving high-cost veterans into junior roles, we can maximize our quarterly." Ding. A notification appeared in the top right corner of the massive 98-inch 4K screen behind Marcus. It was the Outlook notification for his own sent email. "Ah," Marcus chuckled, looking at the CEO. "That'll be the restructuring announcement I sent out. Keeping the troops informed, Arthur. Transparency is my middle name." "Is it?" Arthur asked, his voice like dry parchment. He wasn't looking at Marcus. He was looking at his own iPad. His face had turned a very specific, alarming shade of crimson. "Because according to this transparency report you just sent the entire global staff, your middle name is actually how to hide a DUI from my insurance company." Marcus froze. His thumb stayed hovered over the next slide button. "I'm sorry, Arthur. I don't follow." "Look at the screen, Marcus," said Eleanor Vance, the head of legal, her voice cold enough to flash freeze a lake. "Look at the attachment." Marcus turned around. Because the laptop was still syncing, and because Leo had accidentally triggered a full system log export, the browser history wasn't just a text file anymore. The smart viewer on the boardroom screen had automatically parsed the attachment into a readable preview. The entire board was now staring at a giant, high-definition list of Marcus's most private, most pathetic, and most incriminating digital footprints. Search query: 11:42 a.m. Can I fire a guy named Leo without paying his severance if I claim he stole a stapler? Search query: 12:15 p.m. Symptoms of being a Sigma male trapped in a beta office. Search query: yesterday is it possible to launder money through a child's lemonade stand? Visited site: https://www.google.com/search?Q=high-stakes-hairline.com, wigs for the modern executive. A soft snicker broke the silence. It came from Brad, who was sitting in the junior VP chair, looking at the screen with a mixture of confusion and genuine interest. "Whoa, Uncle Marcus," Brad said, pointing. "Is that the yacht you said you bought? The one that's actually a 12-foot inflatable raft?" Marcus's face went from pale to purple in 4 seconds. This is a hack. I've been compromised. Someone has tampered with my local files. Arthur, Eleanor, you have to understand, I would never." "Marcus," Eleanor interrupted, her eyes scanning the scrolling list. "It says here you spent 3 hours on company time yesterday researching how to frame an IT guy for downloading illegal movies. And here, at 2 p.m., you searched for Eri Kisaki's law firm fees and how to look sad in a deposition." The CEO stood up. He was a tall man, and when he stood, the room seemed to shrink. He walked over to the laptop, which was still dutifully scrolling through Marcus's history as more data synced from his home account. "Marcus," Arthur said quietly. "There is a search here from 3 weeks ago. How to delete internal audit trails for Project X." Project X was the account Leo Thorne was managing before you moved him to the basement. The account that is currently missing $200,000. Marcus's knees actually buckled. He grabbed the edge of the quartz table to stay upright. "Arthur, please." "Leo. It must be Leo. He was the last one with my laptop. He's a disgruntled employee. He's trying to ruin me because he couldn't handle the fundamentals." Back in the basement, Leo was finishing his coffee when the elevator chimed. It wasn't the usual junior shuttle. It was the Executive Express. Out stepped the CEO's personal assistant, a woman who usually looked at Leo like he was a piece of sentient gum on her shoe. Today, she looked at him with something bordering on awe. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Mr. Sterling and the board would like to see you in boardroom A immediately." Leo set his mug down on the wobbly desk. He straightened his cheap, off-the-rack blazer. "Of course. Should I bring my junior analyst onboarding manual?" "I don't think that will be necessary," she replied. As Leo stepped into the elevator, he saw the office floor through the glass. People were standing on their desks. They were cheering. Someone had already printed out the Sigma mail search query and taped it to the break room door. The ghost of Nexus was ascending, and the man who had tried to bury him was about to find out that the basement was the least of his worries. The elevator doors closed with a soft, expensive thud. Leo checked his reflection in the polished brass. He didn't look like a junior analyst. He looked like a man who knew exactly how to clear a cache and exactly how to keep the parts that mattered. The ride up to the 50th floor felt like an ascent to Olympus, but the atmosphere inside the elevator was thick with the scent of ozone and impending judgment. Leo Thorne stood perfectly still, his reflection in the mirrored doors showing a man who had spent 3 years being a ghost and was now finally solidifying. When the doors slid open, the silence of the executive suite was a physical weight. Usually, this floor was a hive of hushed whispers and the soft click of expensive heels. Today, it felt like a tomb. Leo walked past the reception desk. The receptionist, who had spent the last 2 years mispronouncing his name, looked up from her computer. Her eyes were wide, her screen reflecting the same sent email that was currently incinerating Marcus Sterling's life. She didn't say a word, she just pointed toward boardroom A. Leo pushed the heavy mahogany doors open. The scene inside was pure corporate theater. Marcus was no longer standing at the head of the table. He was slumped in a chair, his face a mottled shade of eggplant. His tie was loosened, and his high-stakes hairpiece seemed to have shifted a fraction of an inch to the left. Arthur Sterling, the CEO, sat at the opposite end, his fingers steepled, looking at Marcus with the detached curiosity a scientist might show a particularly disgusting specimen of mold. "Ah, Leo. Come in," Arthur said. His voice was calm, which was far more terrifying than if he had been screaming. "Close the door." Leo complied. He stood at the foot of the table, his posture straight, his expression an unreadable mask of professional concern. "Hacker." Marcus suddenly erupted, lunging halfway across the table. "Arthur, he's standing right there. The disgruntled little rat who did this. He sabotaged my machine. He planted those searches. I've never even heard of a Rolex replica." "Sit down, Marcus," Eleanor Vance, the head of legal, snapped. She didn't look up from her iPad. "Your heart rate is high enough to power a small city. Let's try to keep the hysterics to a minimum." She turned her icy gaze to Leo. "Mr. Thorne. We understand you were the last person to handle Mr. Sterling's laptop before this event." "That is correct," Leo said, his voice steady. "Mr. Sterling approached me at my desk in the junior analyst pool at approximately 3 p.m. He complained of extreme system lag and sync errors. He ordered me to fix the lag immediately so he could present to the board. And did you? Arthur asked. I attempted to, sir, Leo replied. However, the system was severely compromised by a massive backlog of unsynced data from Mr. Sterling's personal devices. When I attempted to clear the cache, the system suffered a catastrophic reply all glitch. It appears the export command interacted with a pending draft in his Outlook. It was an unfortunate technical anomaly. Leo didn't mention the sneeze. He didn't mention the drop of water. In the world of corporate warfare, a technical anomaly was a much cleaner weapon. A glitch. Marcus scoffed, his voice cracking. A glitch that just happened to attach my entire history to a company-wide email? You're lying. You've been planning this since the demotion. Marcus, be quiet, Arthur said, his voice dropping an octave. Leo, we've been looking at the data. There is a specific search query from 18 days ago. It says, how to bypass the Thorn encryption on the Project X ledger. The room went silent. Project X was the firm's most sensitive account, a multi-million-dollar venture that Leo had built from the ground up. I didn't recognize that search, Leo said, tilting his head slightly. Mainly because I was under the impression that only the account manager at the time and the senior director had the access keys. If someone was searching for a bypass, it would suggest they were trying to access the ledger without my knowledge. Arthur tapped a key on his iPad. The 98-inch screen behind Marcus flickered. The list of searches scrolled down to a date 3 weeks prior. 9:14 p.m., Nexus Corp internal audit schedule for Q1. 9:22 p.m., consulting firms in the Cayman Islands that don't ask questions. 9:45 p.m., how to make a $200 deficit look like a marketing pilot program expense. Eleanor Vance leaned forward, her eyes like twin daggers. Marcus, we ran a preliminary check on the Project X accounts 5 minutes ago. There is a $212 discrepancy. It was moved to a shell company called Sterling Synergies LLC last Friday. The same day you signed Leo's demotion papers. Marcus looked like he was about to vomit. It was a loan. A temporary bridge for a personal investment. I was going to put it back. Through a Cayman Island consulting firm. Arthur asked. Marcus, you didn't just steal from the company. You tried to bury the only man who could find the bodies. You demoted Leo to the basement thinking he'd be too humiliated to look at the books. Instead, you handed him the shovel to dig your own grave. The breakdown was swift and ugly. Marcus began to babble, swinging between blaming Leo, blaming the stress of the job, and even blaming Brad, who was currently in the corner of the room trying to figure out how to take a selfie with the board members in the background without them noticing. I did everything for this company. Marcus screamed, standing up so quickly his chair flipped over. I'm the face of marketing. You can't fire me over some web history. People love me. The people currently printing out your Sigma mail search results and pinning them to the dartboard in the break room. Arthur asked dryly. I think their love has its limits. Arthur looked at Eleanor. She nodded. Marcus Sterling, Eleanor said, her voice formal and cold. Effective immediately, you are terminated for cause. This includes embezzlement, gross misconduct, and creating a hostile work environment. Security is already outside the door. Your personal effects will be mailed to you after they have been thoroughly searched by our forensic accountants. The door opened. 2 large men in black suits entered. They didn't even look at Leo, they went straight for Marcus. Get your hands off me. Marcus shrieked as they hoisted him up. I'll sue. I'll burn this place to the ground. Leo. You think you've won? You're still just a basement-dwelling nobody. Leo didn't respond. He simply stepped aside to let the security team drag Marcus out. The last thing they heard of Marcus Sterling was the sound of his expensive Italian loafers scuffing against the marble floor as he was hauled toward the service elevator. The room was suddenly very quiet. Brad stood up, looking awkward. "So, does this mean I'm in charge of marketing now?" Arthur looked at Brad for a long, painful moment. "Brad, go downstairs. Pack your things. Your internship is over. Tell your mother I'll see her at Easter." "Cool," Brad said, seemingly unfazed. "Can I keep the company iPad?" "No." Once Brad had shuffled out, Arthur turned his attention to Leo. The CEO looked tired, but there was a new gleam in his eyes, a look of genuine respect. "Leo," Arthur said, gesturing to the seat Marcus had just occupied. "Sit." Leo sat. The chair was still warm. It felt wrong, yet entirely right. "We've made a mess of things," Arthur admitted. "I trusted Marcus because he was legacy. I ignored the ghost because you made everything look too easy. That was my mistake." "I was just doing my job, sir," Leo said. "No, you were doing his job." "And mine, in some ways," Arthur corrected. He looked at the massive screen, where the browser history was still visible. "That accidental email, it saved this company a lot of money in the long run. We would have never caught the Project X embezzlement until the end of the fiscal year. By then, Marcus would have been in a non-extradition country." Arthur leaned in. "We need someone who understands the fundamentals, Leo. Someone who knows that transparency isn't just a buzzword. I'm appointing you as the acting VP of Global Strategy, effective immediately. Your salary will be tripled, and you'll have a direct line to my office." Leo felt the holy healing of his career finally taking effect. The demotion was gone. The basement was a memory. "Thank you, Arthur," Leo said. "But I have one condition." "And what's that?" Leo looked at the screen, the digital list of Marcus's vanity, greed, and stupidity. "I want to be the one to draft the new digital transparency and security policy. I think I have a very clear vision of what not to do." Arthur laughed, a genuine, booming sound. "I think that's an excellent idea, Leo. Welcome back to the 50th floor." The corner office on the 50th floor didn't smell like ozone and stale coffee. It smelled like expensive leather, cedarwood, and a faint, lingering trace of Marcus Sterling's obnoxious cologne. Leo Thorne stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the city skyline. From this height, the cars looked like ants and the people were invisible. For 3 years, Leo had been one of those invisible people. No more. He turned away from the view and looked at the desk. It was a massive slab of polished obsidian. Marcus had used it as a stage for his ego, filling it with self-awarded Manager of the Year trophies and framed photos of himself shaking hands with celebrities he'd met once at a charity gala. Leo didn't want any of it. He picked up a cardboard box, the same one he had carried to the basement only 24 hours ago, and began to strip the office bare. The trophies went into the trash. The framed photos were turned face down. In their place, Leo set down his world's okayest employee mug. It was chipped, stained, and utterly out of place in a VP's office. It was perfect. A soft chime echoed through the room. It was the intercom. "Mr. Thorne?" The department heads are gathered in the briefing room. They're anxious. "Thank you, Sarah," Leo said. Sarah was the receptionist who had previously ignored him. Now, her voice was pitched with a level of reverence usually reserved for royalty. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes." Leo sat in the high-backed leather chair. He opened the silver laptop, the same one that had been the instrument of Marcus's destruction. He had spent the last hour scrubbing it, not just of the browser history, but of every trace of Marcus's incompetence. He drafted one final company-wide email. He didn't use a template. He didn't use corporate buzzwords like synergy or human capital. Subject: a new protocol for Nexus Corp. Team. Yesterday, many of you received an email you weren't supposed to see. It was a moment of extreme digital transparency, unintentional, but revealing. It showed us that a company is only as strong as the integrity of the people leading it. As the acting VP of Global Strategy, I am implementing a few immediate changes. The Ghost Initiative, we are auditing every department to find the ghosts, the people doing the work while others take the credit. If you've been overlooked, your time is now. Open ledger policy, Project X and all major accounts are now under a multi-signature verification system. No more private consulting fees. Digital respect, we will no longer track your every keystroke, but we expect you to work with the knowledge that your character is defined by what you do when you think no one is watching. I'll be in the break rooms today. Not to give a speech, but to listen. Bring your coffee. Let's get back to work. Best. Leo Thorne. He hit send. There was no sneeze this time. No reply, all catastrophe. Just a clean, professional delivery. Before heading to the boardroom, Leo did something no VP at Nexus Corp had ever done. He took the elevator down to the 4th floor, the basement. The junior analyst pool was quiet when he entered, but the moment the heavy hitters saw him, the room erupted. Toby, the intern, stood up and started clapping. Soon, the entire floor was on its feet. These were the people who had seen Leo's struggle. They were the ones who knew he was the real deal. Leo walked straight to desk 4B, his former wobbly station. Sitting there was a young woman named Maya. She was staring at a complex data model that Marcus had once told her was too advanced for a girl. Maya, Leo said, leaning against the gray partition. Mr. Thorne. I mean, Leo, sir, she stammered, trying to hide her screen. That's a beautiful regression analysis, Leo said, pointing to the monitor. But it's wasted down here. I need a senior lead for the Project X recovery team. Someone who isn't afraid of the math stuff. Are you interested? Maya's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded fiercely. Yes. Absolutely. Good. Pack your things. You're moving to the 49th floor. And Maya? Yes. If your desk wobbles, tell me. I'll fix it myself. When Leo finally entered the 50th floor briefing room, the atmosphere was different. The executive vultures who had spent years kissing Marcus's ring were now sitting in terrified silence. Eleanor Vance, the head of legal, looked at Leo with a sharp, appreciative smile. She was the only one who didn't look scared. She knew a talent when she saw one. The audit is complete, Leo, Eleanor said, sliding a tablet across the table. We found another $50 Marcus had hidden in a travel expense account for a trip to Ibiza that never happened. The board has authorized a full clawback of his severance. Give it to the intern fund, Leo said, not even looking at the numbers. And double the budget for the server room cooling system. It's a sweatshop down there. Arthur Sterling, the CEO, stood at the head of the table. He looked at Leo for a long time. You've changed the energy of this building in 24 hours, Leo. But I have to ask, that email yesterday. The accident. Was it really just a glitch? The room went silent. Everyone leaned in, waiting for the answer. Leo remembered the drop of water. He remembered the sneeze. He remembered the years of being ignored, the insults, and the moment he saw Marcus's search for how to fire Leo without paying him. He looked Arthur straight in the eye. A small, witty smirk played at the corner of his mouth, the kind of look that said he knew more than he would ever reveal. Arthur, Leo said smoothly, in the world of high-level strategy, we have a saying, never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by a really bad HVAC system. Arthur stared at him for a heartbeat, then burst into a roar of laughter. I like you, Thorne. I really do. As the sun began to set over the city, Leo returned to his office. He didn't sit in the big chair. Instead, he stood by the window again. His phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You think you're smart, don't you? You ruined me. Marcus." Leo didn't block the number. He didn't even reply. He simply took a screenshot of the message and forwarded it to Eleanor Vance in legal. "Evidence for the harassment filing," he typed. He then opened his browser. He looked at the blank search bar. For a moment, he thought about all the things people searched for in the dark. Their fears, their greed, their secret shames. Leo typed 4 words into the search bar: "best coffee near me." He picked up his chipped mug, walked out of the office, and closed the door. He didn't lock it. Under his leadership, the doors at Nexus Corp would stay open. The ghost of Nexus was gone. In his place was a man who knew that while the glass ceiling might be hard to crack, once it shattered, the view was spectacular.